Hello, everybody. This is a joint event organized by the University of Patras and the Hellenic Center at London. We're here today to present and discuss with the creators the graphic novel Bare Bones, which was just published about a month ago by Polaris in Greece. I'm George Kazantzidis. I'm teaching classics at the University of Patras, and we're very, very happy to have with us Dimosthenis Papamarkos, the writer. Hello, Dimosthenis.
Hello, George. Thanks for hosting us tonight.
And Kanellos, the comic artist. Hello, Kanellos.
Hello, George. Thanks for the invitation.
So let's go straight to it. I just mentioned the title of the graphic novel, Bare Bones, and before I start asking my questions, I would like to start reading the summary of the novel so that we can get an idea about what it is about. So I'm reading that in a planet irrevocably lost, a human and a machine, both of them unscrupulous hunters in a world where violence and cruelty determine survival, develop an unexpected symbiotic relationship in order to face the horror of radioactivity. Dimosthenis, would you like to start by saying a few things about this symbiotic relationship and how it touches upon the story of the graphic novel?
Let me start by giving some more details about the world the story of the comic takes place into. It is a planet somewhere in the far future. This planet resembles Earth, but it is not necessarily Earth. And we learn by reading the comic that in its recent past, a huge catastrophe has taken place. A catastrophe that is due to a total war that resulted in a nuclear holocaust. In the final stages of this war, we had an emergence, a rise of the machines, but not in a way that we have known from other sci-fi works in the past, meaning the machines gain some conscience, but this is not a conscience that resembles the human conscience. So in a way, we could describe these machines as having an animalistic intelligence. When this happens, the machines turn against the remaining human population of the planet, and they hunt them down in order to feed on them. So we have a planet that is radioactive, devoid of any kind of animal life, in which these new animalistic machines reign supreme as the apex predators of this world. So this brings us to the relationship the two protagonists of the story have, because one of them is such a machine, but a machine that somehow has evolved a higher intelligence, a human-like intelligence, and therefore it is capable of negotiating an agreement with the human protagonist, the other part of the pair. And this agreement is that they help each other to hunt down the other machines, the animalistic machines, in order to feed on the people that are enclosed in them. So this is the symbiotic relationship that they have created. They are two organisms, in brackets, that cooperate in the hunt.
Dimosthenis, can I just ask before I move to the next question? I've got another question for Kanellos, but can I just ask before that, would you like to expand a bit on what you mean by animalistic intelligence? I mean, in sci-fi fiction, be it films, novels, short stories, you name it, usually the threat of a machine is that of a non-human organism acquiring human intelligence. But you mentioned more than once that your machines are not quite like that. You said that they have the intelligence or conscience of an animal. How do you conceive of this kind of distinction? Because I take it that it's an important one.
Yeah, it is actually one of the main themes in Bare Bones in the book. Well, what I try to investigate is an alternative avenue of evolution of machine intelligence. So the what if in Bare Bones is what if the machines gain intelligence, evolve an intelligence, but it's not an intelligence that conforms to human standards, conforms to the classic sci-fi tropes of a machine that gains higher consciousness, has an understanding of itself, blah, blah, blah. But rather, what if we have a machine that its intelligence is as alien to our understanding as it is the intelligence of an animal? So it is in its function, this machine is motivated by instincts rather than conscious desires and wants.
But it's still a speaking machine, right? It has some kind of intelligence.
This is true only for the machine that is a protagonist of the book, and in that respect, it is rather unique in this world. This is why actually we follow this machine as well in our story, because it is a machine that is differentiated by the rest in a very big way, and it makes it an interesting character to follow. The other machines are like, as I said before, animals, so they do not provide the opportunity to make interesting characters. They're rather something like like zombies. That's another metaphor that could fit in the description of these machines.
I see. And can I just now ask a question for the design and how it applies to this kind of symbiotic relationship? Kanellos, we have hundreds and thousands of graphic novels depicting evolved machines or machines cooperating or being hostile to humans, etc. What is the main challenge when someone has to design and think in terms of images? This relationship, once again, in a graphic novel which comes out in 2021.
Actually, I think that my first thought was that the characters should apply to this world. I started thinking like this. I mean, from the graphic novels that I've already read, I saw a pattern actually, some palettes, some designing styles that you could see them repeat themselves actually all the time. So I was having in my head that I want to build something that does not exist. I want to build something that I haven't seen it in any graphic novel that I've seen. So the first thing that I was having in my head was the world. And for me, the world is some kind of protagonist of the book. when I decided to put those characters actually into this world, the thought was that they are one with it. You see what I'm talking about?
Yes. So, Kanellos, you say basically that first you conceived of the general setting of the world, and then how the characters would fit into this pattern.
Even the design, or even even the clothes design that I decided to give them, even the armor of the protagonist robot, it was inspired actually from this world.
Okay, and Kanellos, when you say inspired, because the idea of symbiosis is the most central concept in this graphic novel, how humans and machines merge with each other and they become one, sometimes perhaps indistinguishable, although this is left for the readers to decide. Would you say that the way that you conceive artistically this relationship between the external setting and the characters, does it operate on the same kind of blending of images? I'm trying to figure out exactly what do you mean when you say that you conceive of the characters as a reflection of this setting. Obviously, people have to go and read the graphic novel and see. But if it's a very abstract question, but if you can comment a little bit on it.
I will respond to you technically. When I started searching what kind of architecture this world will have, what kind of mechanical design the world will have, as I made them, actually, I saw what my hand could do easily and what my hand couldn't do easily. When you design a character, you have to know how to reproduce him, how to repeat the same character in many cages, in many, how do we call them in English? Panels, yeah.
In the panels, yes.
So after I built this world, I needed to destroy it, actually. That's the most important, because we're talking about the aftermath. So whatever was easily drawn from me, I decided to put it in the characters.
I quite like the idea, what you said. People will see that obviously the novel is depicting a world after it has been destroyed. But the way you put it, Kanellos, is that first you have to imagine the world, and as you said, then to destroy it. And this sounds very deconstructionist in a way. So you don't just design ruins, you first think of them as buildings, and then you destroy them, right? This is why we call these people artists. So can I just...
yes, George, sorry to interrupt. If I may add to what Kanellos was saying before, another thing that we discussed during the stage that we were working on the concept art for the characters, etc., is that we have to deal with a world that is more or less a mausoleum. I mean, it's a world where the most prominent thing is death. This is, of course, connected with the title of the book, Bare Bones, which refers to a part from the Greek Orthodox funerary service, and this part says that I mean there is a prophet speaking and says, "I descended to the graves and I looked upon the bare bones and I wondered who this man used to be. Was he a king or a soldier, a sinner or a just man, a rich man or a poor one?" But now, and it ends like that, we cannot tell. So this is a very basic idea behind much of what you see in the art of Kanellos in Bare Bones, that we have some motifs that bring to the reader the imagery of death. So, for example, in the case of the exoskeletons, the robots, we have these organic bone-like structures that bring to our mind kind of robotic skeletons or something like that, in a way. And on the other hand, we have what Kanellos described before, a world so destroyed that despite the fact that we have elements we can refer to, that we can recognize, they're so destroyed that we cannot make much sense out of it. And this was, of course, Kanellos' genius, that he first conceived, the world as it used to be, and then he turned it down, and he produced this. These ruins that even their desolation, they retain some of this, beauty of this romantic beauty, we could say.
I'll come to the topic of romantic beauty and how it connects to antiquity. But before that, I want to ask something about the bare bones. Dimosthenis, you just mentioned where the phrase and the title actually of the graphic novel derives. Shall we say that in its original context, bare bones is quite pessimistic, right? It's about death and how it sweeps everything and turns everything the same. In the novel, on the other hand, as you just mentioned, these bare bones, they become in a way recyclable functional material, right? Something can be created after all out of them. So I just wanted to ask, since this is a dystopia, a future world destroyed, nothing survives, is there anything in it that promises some kind of eventual recyclability, some kind of redemption, a promise for a new life emerging? So my first question is to Dimosthenis in terms of the script and how he conceived of the story, and then if there is, I would like to ask Kanellos, how does this reflect on the images, on the art?
That's a very interesting question in the way that it approaches an angle of the comic that we have not discussed that much about. It's true, there is hope, as there is always hope in nature of rebirth. But this new world that has already started emerging in our story does not include humanity. So it's a combination. I mean, if we want to be optimistic, we can be, but this optimism refers only to the nature of this world. But there is also the pessimistic point of view that says that humanity has no future in this world. In fact, humanity is a species that has eclipsed from this world. The new hope is mostly reflected in these very lush landscapes that we have discussed with Kanellos how it would be, and Kanellos executed them magnificently. So we have a world of ruins that is swallowed by a sea of green, by a nature that is rampant. And this is what makes it, in a way, both beautiful and bleak. It depends on where you stand. If you stand on the side of humanity, it's a bleak world. This is more or less it.
Okay, which leads me to the question I wanted to ask to Kanellos about the forests and the woods, which appear sometimes, in some of the panels of the novel. How this, let's call it, because I'm lacking a better technical term, Kanellos, here. Let's call it the green element. How did you handle this? And does it? And again, I would like to ask it in terms of in terms of symbiosis. Does the green element, is it taking over the ruins, the bricks, and the walls? So how did you cope with it while you were producing the?
Actually, in my head, from the beginning, I imagined actually of a desert world. Desert considering animals, humans, animals, etc. Nature always finds her place actually to evolve, to develop, etc., etc. So it was one of the main characteristics of the world that I designed, actually, the green, if you like. I mean, I think that in a page, in a panel, we speak about it, that the plants, all the green elements, they were biologically engineered to exist. So when humans ceased to exist, they just took their place and they evolved much quicker than usually. So you have nature that is in many like this, swallowed the world, if you like, or something like this.
Okay. And still on this matter, let's say, I don't know, I may be wrong, but I think that in the last decade or so, in terms of dystopia fiction, etc., we seem to have moved from an older paradigm, according to which a radioactive war would have destroyed everything, to a new one, which people who love theory, they tend to call it eco-horror. It's about nature taking over and devastating human presence in the planet, etc. In terms of this robot, which is something between, let's say, it's something between a robot and a human and an animal. Would you say, and in connection to what we just said about the green element and the forests, would you be willing, any of you, to place the setting or the rationale of this project into this eco-horror environment, or how do you feel about it?
To be honest, I haven't thought about it before in these terms, but I suppose that now that you mention it and I'm thinking it over, that it does have elements of eco-horror, less on the part of the machines, because their organic elements are more or less the remnants of humanity. So there's nothing new there evolving, and in a way, the evolution of the machines will soon reach a dead end. They will soon also disappear from this planet, because they support their existence solely on finite energy sources. In this case, the last remnants of humanity. But I suppose that the strong part that theories from modern theories, from mythology, this category of biology, have influenced the comic, and of course, the strong presence of the green element, the the artificial plants that after the death of humanity have developed and spread all over and checked. These last two elements, I suppose, that bring the story of Bare Bones closer to the eco horror. How should I say it? Theory or
theory.
Yeah.
Okay, and Dimosthenis, you just mentioned, you just disclosed the kind of stuff that the novel's main characters are eating, and I wanted to ask. There is a lot of let's call it gore, the gore element, right? And people would say that some people would say that there are some very violent, extremely violent scenes being depicted. How did you handle those, Kanello? Let's say the violence. Obviously, it's a violent world. These characters have to survive. They regress back to an animal state. So how does an artist deal with it pictorially?
I treated it as I treated the whole world, poetically. What I mean, I didn't want, how can I say it, the gore element. I never treated actually those elements like gore. When I was sketching it, when I was searching the colors, etc., I was having in my head, how can I make this beautiful, actually. Make this aesthetic beautiful, that it could collaborate with the whole world, the whole palette, the whole rhythm of the comic, etc., etc. So I am in a bit of how can I say it? Lack of experience actually in this kind of sketch. So I didn't want to, how can I say it, to copy or to be influenced from gore sketches, from gore graphic novels, etc. And I just wanted to give something else, if you like.
And may I add that this was actually supported also by our approach that was not going for the shocking factor, but rather than the description of what is going on, what is the cycle of life, or if you want for a better description, for the cycle of death in this world. So I also agree with Kanellos that it's not that much gore as we have become accustomed to it in horror works, but rather a description of a natural process. It's when we see the two protagonists killing another hybrid machine, one of these animalistic machines, it's like seeing a wolf, for example, bringing down a deer. So, of course, there is violence in it, but we're not glorifying it. We're rather describing it as part of the process, so that the reader, so that the reader would understand what are the basic principles of this world. It's a world where everything has collapsed. I mean, human society, any notion of what is good and what is evil, what is ethical and what is not. It's just two organisms striving for survival with by any means.
Okay, this what you just said, Dimosthenis, about the human society collapsing. Would you say that, since this is the main theme of the novel, would you say that a society that is collapsing, is it regressing back to an animal state, as we usually imagine this animal state to have been in the first place before the advent of civilization? Or is this return a bit more brutal because in the meantime, society has evolved? Or doesn't it make any difference? What I mean to say is, obviously these characters have to survive, But the kind of brutality that we witness, is it the brutality of primeval people, or is it another type of violence and brutality? Because if you see the novel, there is constantly in every single panel a reminder that something happened in between. Civilization evolved. You have huge buildings, amazing ruins. So these characters, whatever they're doing it under the shadow of these ruins. How would you say, both of you basically, how do they deal with it?
Well, I would distinguish between the brutality of the machine and the brutality of the man, because the machine is brutal because actually it's working outside what we humans would describe as, a civilized way. The machine in this world is like, a child being born in a vacuum. So it just does whatever it thinks that it is logical for its survival. If violence allows it to do it, then it chooses violence. If negotiations or a more civilized way gives it the chance to survive, then it chooses that without any problem. When it comes to the human counterpart of the machine, then his brutality is not a regression. Is not a product of a regression to a primeval state of mind, but rather the byproduct of an evolution of the human society in its extremes. It's what I try to do is actually take the paradigm of how modern Western societies function nowadays and blow it up to an exaggeration. So,
would you like to explain this a bit about the Western modern societies and what they're doing today?
It's I'll try to keep it simple and as short as possible. The way I see it is that we say that we care about some basic principles that describe, in our view, what it means to be human. But the Western societies claim for themselves humanitarian sensitivities, and that its policies are dictated by this ideology.
Yes.
Yeah, but on the other hand, and not as subtly as they would like they would like to think that it happens. They are unscrupulous in pursuing their interests on anything. They're eager to resort to violence to secure energy sources, or they destroy the environment in order to serve their own notion of development or whatever. And in a way, in the recent decades, we have seen the results of this mindset and this way of acting. So in bare bones, what happens right now has happened at a much bigger scale, to the point that these societies reached the 2 minutes to midnight, but they lost their chance to stop the apocalypse. They just had these last 2 minutes in order to say goodbye to their dear ones.
Mm-hmm. And Can I also ask, now that you said, you commented on how these societies developed and everything, and then they collapsed. I wanted to ask a question to Kanellos now about the buildings, because the landscape, this dead landscape, is in a way the protagonist of the novel. If we try to figure out the kind of city or the urban landscapes through which these characters wander, is there any chance that we can trace some Greek elements? Or some of the buildings look like quite
actually
antiquated.
Yes, you can, of course, you can see some Greek elements. Actually, when I was doing my research to find all the elements that will construct this world, I was thinking about brutalism, which is one of my favorite architectural movements, and I always wanted to do something like this to put it in my work. And as we were discussing with Dimosthenis, he asked me to see how we can put some Greek elements in there. And the whole thinking was that if the world that the story takes place, it is 2,000 years from now, we have a civilization that evolved and will be destroyed many times, as we can see from our history. So we were thinking about why not the Greek element, the Greek architecture could find her place in one of these civilizations. So the whole thinking was to put the ruins of this new classic Greek civilization or something.
Okay, so you basically say that you integrated former civilization collapses into your world, because collapse as well is something that is repeating itself, which brings us back to what we were discussing before about the implicit, not optimism, the implicit promise that since the world has destroyed itself again in the past, then there might be some space left for it to be reborn in whatever form, with or without humans, right?
Maybe, yes. I never thought hope when I never thought about hope when I was building this world. I mean, in my head was the end of the end. You see what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Being guided from the script as well. I don't want to spoiler actually the story, but you see that that as you take a walk in this world, you see nothing, and I really wanted the πώς είναι αυτός που διαβάζει? I really wanted
the readers to
the reader.
I really wanted the reader to have this feeling actually of this emptiness, of this no life atmosphere, and I never thought about hope, about reconstructing something.
And sorry if I may add, it's not that much about collapse of due to this distraction. Sorry, but rather, this natural succession of civilizations that we see in the past of bare bones. It's mostly, parts that have been inhabited in this world and have been abandoned and then rediscovered at some point later on in the future, and then built upon, and then build upon even more and more and more. So the idea of the different architectural styles that have been incorporated in the creation of the world of bare bones is that we have many civilizations that have different artistic and architectural expressions. And these civilizations succeed each other. So we have many strata of information in the world that we see. What is ancient on the synchronicity of bare bones could be our own future, and what is ancient for us is something almost half forgotten in myth for the synchronicity of bare bones. So this is why I asked from Kanellos to incorporate elements from the ancient Greek past in certain parts of the comic that remain untouched in a way. So we have, you know, the temple, for example, the temple of Poseidon at Sunio, that we see it as we see it today. This is in a way a reminder that, you know, this world is ancient. There is a mythical, an almost mythical past to it. We're seeing its destruction, its final end, but it used to be something much bigger, much more interesting and fuller of life. So this helps create a stark contrast with what is happening in our story now.
Mm-hmm. And as we're reaching a conclusion soon, would you say that we started this discussion by talking about machines, and I can see that just after the cover page you have the 3 laws by Isaac Asimov about robots and machines.
Exactly.
On the other hand, and I want to make once again the question, because the way that I read the novel, it seems to me that there is a kind of antagonistic relationship between the machine element and what we called before the green element. I can see in some panels, I don't know, Kanellos, if it is intentional or not, where you're zooming out and you're depicting large scenes of forestry. I can see many times these big trees morphing into human hands, human limbs. Is it something that I just am I overinterpreting, or is it in a way in terms of images you give a human form, a much bigger human form compared to the machine and the symbiotic thing there.
Actually, it's a thought. It's a thought of. We wanted to talk about the narcissism of the human race, and the reason that they built those machines was to destroy each other. So they have a big idea about themselves. So I wanted to show this as the remains of this vanity. You see the destroyed anthropomorphic elements that they constructed, and at the end you see that it's only those that were left. You see what I mean?
I see that you as creators of the novel, you have the tendency to lend it in a more pessimistic tone, while I keep tracing elements of promise for something new. But this
That's
is
the best thing you can do, actually. If you can find reasons, you can find things that you give them another meaning. It's our purpose, actually. Really, we have an idea in our head. We put this, but the moment that you take it in your hands, it becomes yours as well. You see what I mean?
Yeah. So, guys, if it is a completely bleak graphic novel, as you want us to make us believe, you want us to believe. I mean, bleak novels, they come to an end, and as Kanellos said before, I wanted to imagine this as the end of the end. Is there going to be a sequel?
Of course.
Okay, so it's
in
not
another
the end,
planet.
really, is it? There is, so as the reader is reaching to the last page, there is at least the promise, right, for another graphic novel coming.
Well, it has been conceived as a bigger story arc. So what we see in this comic book is, of course, something that is self-contained, is autonomous. I apologize for for the lack of a better term. It's a story that someone that has a beginning and an end on itself, and somebody can read just that and go on with his life. But when I was writing it, and later on when we started working together with Kanellos, I shared with him the idea that there will be another act, a second act, maybe a third act, because in my mind, this story draws some elements from the ancient Greek tragedy, and in that way, I would like to keep, the parallels a bit more.
Okay.
Be truer to the parallel. How
a
three-part story.
And as is well known, tragedies come in trilogies. And a final question for Kanellos, which is, it's going to sound a very basic question, but I always wanted to ask it. For someone who doesn't know the technicalities of a graphic novel, for a reader like me, someone has the impression that you have the writer on the one hand, he's dictating the idea, and then the artist executes the idea. But something tells me that things are incredibly far more complex than that. So, Kanellos, I just wanted to ask, where do you find the point where the way that you imagining in images something that has been dictated to you reflects back on the very idea and in the end, in effect, changes the very idea? Is there such a point?
There is a point from, actually, this point is the trust. What I mean that if the writer, the one who conceived the idea, trusts you with it, I work like this actually, it gives you the liberty to go far away with your imagination. It's like you are becoming the director of a film. You have the basic idea, of course. You are all the time in communication with the writer, or not. I mean, in this case, with Dimosthenis, we were talking all the time, proposing ideas, etc., etc. But when you start to construct the graphic novel, you become the actor, you become the architect, you become the photographer, the one who puts the lights, you become everyone actually. And I always treated comic books like films in paper. So the whole idea, the point that, how can I say it? Actually, it's the point that when the scenarist shares his idea, it's in this point the scenarist should know that it will not be as he imagined. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I absolutely see what you mean.
Sorry, and sorry to intervene again. It's more about actually two different narrative methods merging together. That's true in comics. So the one enriches the other. You can have, you cannot anticipate the final result before you have this this meeting of the artist and the author, because as Kanellos said, what I have imagined, for example, about the shape of the machine, of the robot, is not what Kanellos ended up doing at the end. It contains a lot of my initial ideas, but in the meantime, it got enriched as it should be by Kanellos' vision, and the end result, is something that is definitely not 100% Kanellos, not 100% me, but it expresses rather than our visions, the vision of the world of the book. This is how I like to see it, that from a moment and on, we're not serving ourselves, but rather the common goal. And when you're doing that, many things change, and become
many
more.
Things come up.
Yeah, many things come up. It becomes more diverse, and this is, the beauty of collaborating so closely with someone on such a project. So
on that beautifully collaborative and optimistic, may I add, note, thank you very much, guys, and good luck with the graphic novel and its sequels. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, George, and thanks for the conversation as well and hosting us tonight.